Hey guys, Skittlerampage here. Welcome back to a new video. I do hope you're enjoying your day today. So today I want to talk about the whole article that's been going viral for Funko saying that they may not last another 12 months, another year in business. They may go out of business, all of this. It's basically everywhere in the last roughly 24 hours. I've had a lot of you guys ask me, oh, what are your thoughts on this? Oh, do you want to talk about this and all that? Initially, I wasn't going to just because, it's just another article going around of, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, Funko's going out of business and all that. And, obviously, yes, they've made a lot of poor decisions in the past and they're slowly trying to fix that and all that. But given so many of you guys have been asking me what are my thoughts on this, I figured we'd go over the article and talk about it a little bit today. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about how Funko's doing, about everything that's going viral right now. People are making jokes about this all over the internet. But yeah, let's jump into this really quickly here. So this comes from Dexerto. I don't even know how to say their company name. But anyways, it says, Funko Pop Maker admits it might not survive another year as sales crash. And then we'll go into where they're quoting this specifically. So they use some AI right here to make a rest in peace Funko thing. Funko has warned its investors that it may not survive another year after reporting a sharp decline in sales and issuing a formal notice about its financial stability. What's weird about that, though, is that in the recent earnings call for Q3, they actually made a little bit more money than expected. And obviously they're still in debt, and especially compared to last year, they didn't make as much, so sales are down, but their stock still went up like almost 10%. Because it was a decent earnings call. It was better than expected. So that's where I'm kind of saying it's not as bleak as all these articles are making it out to look, but it is still pretty bleak. Anyways, let's continue. The collectibles giant behind the pop vinyl brand posted net sales of $250 million for the third quarter of 2025, down 14% from the same period last year, and recorded a net loss of roughly $1 million. According to its latest financial filing, the company cited falling demand, higher tariffs, and tighter retail inventories as major challenges in what it described as a difficult retail environment, which is true. In reality, it is. There's a lot of companies struggling out there. It's not just Funko specifically. But like I said before, a lot of their poor choices in the past led to this. And I'm actually going to go over one of the biggest leading causes to that later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. But it says Funko's troubles follow years of explosive growth fueled by vinyl collectibles, which once dominated shelves at Walmart, Target, and comic book stores. But as overproduction flooded the market and consumer interest waned, the company, once steady profits, began to collapse. So yes and no there. The reason I say that, we can actually just go over it now. The reason why they're in the debt they are in now is, yes, due to overproduction, but there's a specific reason as to why they did that in that. Why did they overproduce? Well, they thought, hey, people are buying our products up like crazy, especially, it basically, as everybody calls it, it was the after like 2018 big, just crazy growth in Funko. Like everybody wanted Funko Pops. And this led into 2020 when COVID and the pandemic and all of that hit to where, people were at home. They were looking for new things to collect and, things to occupy themselves since the world was kind of falling apart. And that was when Funko had a huge boost in popularity and a huge boost in sales. Funko scalping and, reselling and all that was at an all-time high. Things were selling out left and right at the Funko shop. People were complaining, and that led to Funko making more stock. When scalpers were buying up everything, to Funko, that was signaling, hey, we can't keep these in stock, so let's make 10, 20, 30,000 more of these. Because in reality, it was mostly resellers buying these out. It wasn't actual just regular collectors. So when plenty of resellers moved on, Funko was left with all of this stock that those resellers were no longer, buying out on the first day, and it was sitting in stock on the website, and then all the fans that did want it were able to get it, but then they were left over with like 10, 20,000 stock. Because I was chatting with a friend who worked a lot with Funko, and that's basically kind of how they explained it to me, saying that it was false data essentially that they were working with, when they were just blindly making all of this stock and hoping for the best because it worked the first time. They kept following suit, and that's what kind of led them to this situation here where they were just mass producing everything thinking, hey, people are going to buy all this, and no, that wasn't the case. And don't even get me started on how Funko just wants to make everything for everybody. Like, it just doesn't make sense to do that. And the new CEO even said that in the recent earnings call. It's literally quoted in that earnings call where I have it written out here in my notebook. It says, "They still aim to be the definitive brand for transforming pop culture into products. This includes new footwear, cosmetics, all that stuff." And that means that they literally want to still continue making anything and everything into pops and all these other products when you shouldn't be doing that. You need to focus on what's trending, what's popular, and what people actually want. And then when you have the extra money to do, you know, little lines like, I don't even know something that comes to mind, but I'll pop something up on the screen. Something like this that isn't as popular and there's not much of a demand for it, then do that. When you have the extra cash, you have the extra revenue to work with. Don't do it when you're in an extreme slump. That makes no sense. And then that's one of their goals here to continue doing the same thing they were doing before. I hope if that's their plan, they at least scale it back significantly, because it just doesn't make any sense to continue with making everything. Like, I get it, that's basically the Funko motto. There's a fan of everything, and Funko wants to be that central product where they can produce everything, but you can't do that anymore. It's not working, and you gotta stop. But yeah, anyways, basically for a few years, Funko was working with a lot of false data where it was mostly resellers buying out all the stock. So they were basically getting a false demand on how much people actually wanted these specific products. Let's read the end of this article where this is where all the doom and gloom comes from, and this is what everybody's been sharing and clowning Funko for. It says, in its latest SEC filing, Funko said there is substantial doubt about our ability to continue as going concern for the next 12 months. So that's the big statement, that's the big quote going around. And they did actually indeed state this technically in their SEC filing. I attempted to read it, let that be known. But then I found out it was 131 pages, and I was like, it's gonna be so hard to find this. So I used AI to find it for me, just so I could confirm that they did in fact say this, and this company wasn't just clickbaiting everybody. Anyway, so yeah, guys, that's pretty much the situation in itself. Funko doesn't have a lot of confidence in its current plans to survive the next 12 months. And a lot of you guys have been asking, how do I feel about that? I don't know. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like a year from now, you know? There's really two ways this can go. There's only two ways. They can either get their act together, start being more profitable and making more money and paying down their $250 million in debt, or a big toy company like Hasbro or Mattel or whoever else is out there, maybe even someone overseas, will acquire them. And they'll acquire all that debt too, but those are the options here. And honestly, it might be worth them being bought out, because a company like Mattel or Hasbro, even though, are they perfect? No. Do I know everything about them? No. But I know they're super successful at the end of the day. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here for anybody who just absolutely hates Funko or is just laughing at the situation and all that. One, you got to consider that a lot of people have jobs at Funko. The ones that weren't cut, that Funko already reduced their workforce by a ton year after year. So consider those people who are going to lose their jobs too if Funko did go under, as much as you maybe hate this plastic vinyl toy that has no impact on your life whatsoever. It's just so silly, just all the hate. I did a whole video on Funko hate and all that. Anyways, the point I was trying to make here is that it's almost impossible. Actually, I don't want to say impossible because, you know, anything is possible, but it's highly unlikely is a better way to phrase this, that a company of Funko's size and reach, especially globally, just goes out of business. You have big companies like eBay and, you know, other pretty rich people that invested in them a few years ago. Around $200 million to be in fact. Like, they invested a ton of money into Funko because they saw the potential. And you have a million other things going for Funko. They have a ton of licenses under their belt. They have a ton of relationships under their belt with big retailers, you know, big companies out there of your favorite brands and licenses, whether it's anime, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, etc., Disney. So they have a lot going for them, and there's still a lot of value in Funko as a company. It's just poorly ran and poorly managed, unfortunately. And that's why they're going through CEOs left and right. That's why I say it's highly unlikely that, you know, Funko just goes out of business. Someone will most likely acquire them, or they will get their act together. That's just where I kind of stand on it. And I think the likely situation, given Funko has $250 million in debt, unfortunately, is that they might get acquired in a year if it comes to that. But I could be wrong. They could get their act together, and I would love for them to get their act together. A lot of this just kind of stems from that once they went public as a company, they had to answer to shareholders. And this has happened to companies time and time again where they go public, they have to answer to shareholders. So, they make a lot of risky moves, or they put the shareholders first versus the fans, of whatever that particular product is. And, it's all about profits, unfortunately. So they have to make choices that myself or you may not like at the end of the day. But they've also still been putting out plenty of products that we do like and we do love. And that's really with any company that goes public, which is pretty unfortunate, but it's just the name of the game. It is what it is with that situation. In all reality, I really don't know what the direction of Funko is. I don't know. I'm not saying sound the alarm, sell all your Funko Pops. It's kind of just whatever you feel is right. If you feel, Funko might go out of business, if you feel that's the direction going, or, they might be bought out by someone else who may take the company in a different direction, and you strongly feel that Funko just has no hope or there's no outlook here and you want to get rid of your collection, go for it. Don't let anybody fault you for that. That is your decision to make. If you want to downsize your collection and really focus on the ones you really love, which is what I've been doing over the last few years. I've considerably downsized on what I had because I just didn't really like a lot of the decisions Funko was doing, the overproduction and all that. So, just do whatever you think feels right. I'm not going to tell you to sell off everything or keep everything. I want you to do what you feel is right if, this is the path Funko is going down in the next year. Nobody really knows. They could completely turn things around later. Or they could, but they got to stop with the overproduction. They got to stop making things that nobody's really asking for, or at least find a good balance. They got to get things faster to market like U2's does. That's just one of the companies that I know that gets a lot of licenses fast that Funko should already be jumping on. And just other things I was going over here. I think working with more content creators is a good idea. Just make sure to pick the right ones. They plan to expand more in Asia and Latin America. I think that's great for those fans, and it gives Funko more reach and gets Funko Pops in more hands, and that means more collectors spending money, obviously. What I don't think they should do is all the other products they were looking at doing, like footwear, food, cosmetics. We could completely scratch those out. K-pop products, I think, is a good idea. People love that, and K-pop Demon Hunters was pretty successful for them, and all of the other lines were pretty successful. Is going to be one of their biggest strategies going forward in the next year. I think that's smart. People love the blind box and mystery aspect, so people are willing to spend money on that if the products are good and the licenses are good. But if they're just making anything with that, it's not going to work. And it's just going to be the repeat overproduction of things people didn't ask for. I don't know, guys. We'll see what Funko's looking like in their next earnings call for Q4. Like I said, Q3 was relatively decent. Like, it was better than expected, which is nice to hear because Q2 was a complete disappointment and crashed their stock crazy. They are down 75% to date, roughly, on their stock, almost 80%, which is just genuinely crazy and sad to see. But I'm hoping this new Josh Simon guy, CEO, figures it out, gets things together, and hopefully changes some of his ideas, because some of these are just not going to work. They really just need to focus on limiting stock, maybe doing more pre-orders on more of the popular lines, though that might affect their retailer relationships. I'm not really sure, but got to try something different at this point. I don't know. That's pretty much my thoughts, guys. We're going to see. I'm not just going to say the sky is falling because a random news outlet said, hey, the sky is falling, I kind of just want to see how things play out for myself, and not really just like, oh my gosh, everything's crumbling. I'm just not going to stress myself out like that. Like, I like Funko. I collect a lot of other things too. If it's the end, okay. If it's not, okay. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions on all of this. Do you think it's a good outlook for Funko? Make sure to listen to their earnings call, look at all the other news other than this doom and gloom stuff. Anyways, I'm going to end off the video here. See you guys in the next one.